the other day, it's so noisy. How many people are called there?
So you know that so then it became you know, it had
Nice. So my publicity drive was here.
Yes.
Yeah.
You came to mind. I'll come.
Yeah.
so when
He was telling me this morning, nice to see you. He told me this morning that he was on the right against this study. Yeah, me too. Just that's right, yeah. He said that. What's his name? You saw a picture of this
With the moderated speakers?
Yes.
yes.
I can take it.
It was and then
You want
I said
No. What's Sunny?
over here.
Yes. I'm going to put this on the website, the traffic website.
that was serious.
So I hope we should all be in one place, or we'll be too far apart.
I know, is it too far?
I'm mostly
We can block, it's not up here, we can block.
in the last job because he's been.
Yes, you can.
You can block the day, not the IEC.
Oh, not the IEC, oh yes.
Yeah, so,
The IEC.
so like that.
So,
Circumstances. Have you been to any?
Okay. Yes, you can. Okay.
Yeah, but there's no
Okay, another one?
ETS.
No, it's just climate change.
UNP.
Okay, I have like five.
What?
So I guess one probably good.
Yeah,
Because
That's what's in this session.
UN
GDF took a
kind of.
sponsor and they took a picture like with the block the GDF logo. So Monique Barber, the CEO of Jeff, made everyone reassemble and take a picture again. Not
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's Sunday. You ask for Jesus, they go. Santa Truro.
Hello, my friend. You ready? Mike, I think we haven't met. Just by emails. Huh? Yeah.
It's okay, it's different because at the end.
One more minute, we'll start.
No problem.
Yeah, a couple of more minutes.
No problem. Just ask him to present. Then we'll be coming when they are in your.
How many? What did you take a picture with us?
Oh, I thought it's I didn't know you wanted. I thought it's just.
Will you do it again?
Por lo menos ya tenemos más asistencia de poner.
Oh, speakers.
I didn't know. It's the fault of my girl. I was talking with you.
How's it?
No,
It's like 3 years old. And I got it 3 years
like
old.
keen on general. We need to change the thing with the
No, I mean, conflict's not really usually in FSC, it's the supporters. So I'd say WWF is just as polarized as the areas have been. And I think it's still the same. Unfortunately, because it's kind of counterproductive.
They use it instead of the features that was
I guess it's completely based thing. I'm not a religious person, so that kind of sickens me. So you understand that I don't understand it. Maybe all the atheists go for the PhD system when the religious go for
No, I didn't get about that. But I know that someone actually
Yeah. I think it's going well because we're spending way more time focused on my role is really expansion. So thinking about how to make PDFs.
Oh, how's it going? Okay. Yeah? So I'll get yes.
So you're going to come to
Yes, thanks for inviting me. I was asked about it, but I was interested.
you come to the shop.
Oh, I thought she's going to take notes. You got to take notes. That was some time.
So yeah, just like we're going more on like grassroots level in different countries now, so that's good. The things that they are interested in
Once that sorted out, and then everything else.
yeah,
Then to be less people.
exactly. Yeah, so it's a local solution. Nice to meet you. Pleasure to meet you. You worked with the border. Yeah. Nice to meet you. Sweden. Recently. At the
they have to talk to the Ministry of Environment. And the government's working. So you is working with forestry in
Yeah, exactly. I had some good chats with Eduardo about it because I got in touch with Comfort and he ran in the commission.
You're talking about Ministry of Environment.
Well, let's catch up later because they're showing a lot of interest towards receiving the so they might even come, but we need to work with them to communicate and explain and
Started? Okay. I think we have a quorum, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this workshop. Feel free to come down front. We try to make it a little bit informal, trying to have us move the chairs out here so we can have a bit more of a discussion. My name is Chip Barber. I am the Forest Division Chief in the U.S. Department of State. And a lot of people say, so what on earth does the Department of State do with people that work on forests? And actually we do. There's a lot of issues related to forests in our bilateral relationships with countries related to trade, conservation, and obviously a lot of international organizations and treaties like climate and biodiversity where forest issues come up. Although my background, I've worked with IUCN and World Resources Institute and a lot of other organizations in the past, so I'm both non-government and that. So what we're going to do today is basically have a bit of an overview and some cases, looking at some of the most recent developments and what's been going on in approaches to tackling illegal logging and associated trade and creating more transparency in international trade in timber and forest products. And what we're going to do is, I'm just going to say a couple little things to set the stage, and then I will introduce all of our folks very briefly, and then one by one we will do this, and we'll have a number of fairly rapid presentations, I think, and then we'll try to open it up and have a bit more of a discussion through questions and comments and make it a bit more interactive. And so we'll try to get through the presentation part relatively speedily. So just thinking back about 10, 15 years, it's interesting, when I first started working on these issues back in the 1990s, you couldn't really talk about illegal logging very much in the international stage. There were NGOs that talked about it. People knew that there were a lot of problems with, and sometimes very systematic and broad-scale illegal logging in all sorts of territories, protected areas, indigenous territories, bad logging in production areas in many countries. But it was not really a fit topic. You weren't allowed to talk about it at the international level. That began to change really about 10 or 12 years ago. And there was a lot of more recognition that legality of forest management and timber supplies is not sustainability. You can have there's a lot of unsustainable forest management which is completely legal, let's put it that way. But it's a first step. It's very hard to imagine how you get to more sustainable management of forests and conservation of forests without having some modicum of basic law enforcement and respect for the law, so people aren't just stealing things all the time. So it's become a very important focus over the years. First talked about internationally, and then you begin to see a lot of domestic action. You had in the United States, and we had a 100-year-old law called the Lacey Act, which is a wildlife trafficking law. It makes it illegal to import or possess wildlife that has been taken illegally outside the United States or from in one state and taken into another state. That's about 100 years old. 2008 it was amended to cover timber, or more broadly, plants. And so it basically makes it a crime to import timber into the United States if the government can prove it, they can prove it was illegally harvested in a foreign country. Or for that matter, on an Indian reservation, or from one state to another state within the United States. So this had some impacts on the way industry was thinking about things. In the European Union, there have also been some developments. We'll hear some more a bit later from Chen, the development of a new set of regulations that they call the EU Timber Regulation. That uses a different method, but it basically is trying to make importers take responsibility for the legality of their sources. Australia is working on similar legislation. You have then in some major processing and producing countries, ones I know best are Indonesia and China, domestic efforts to develop their own systems of legality verification and tracking of timber, which are in various stages of development. We as the United States have formal MOUs with both Indonesia and China to combat illegal logging, and we work together and we meet with them and on a regular basis at a fairly high level, and it's become a major part of that aspect of our sort of environmental relations and our trade relations. In our free trade agreement with Peru, is an interesting case. There's an annex to that agreement on forest governance, which the genesis of that was illegal logging of mahogany and concern about that. So it's cropping up in more places, and there's been a lot of politics around these things, of course, but I think that there's a lot more interest now in practical solutions. People realize it's a new world. The market environment is asking for more transparency. The tools to monitor this are out there. There's all these new ways that you can look down from space and do things through social networking. It's getting harder and harder to do anything anywhere in a supply chain in the world where someone can't poke their eyes into it and see what's going on. So it's really a new world, and people are looking for practical tools to actually change and thrive and adapt and be able to make money and produce forest products in that environment. And that's what we're going to hear a lot about, I think, as we move forward. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Chen Hin-kyung, who, aside from organizing this whole thing, is an old friend and colleague. He's from Traffic. He's worked in conservation for nearly 25 years. He's currently working mainly on forest trade issues and is the global coordinator for Traffic's global timber trade program. And he's going to give us basically a two-part presentation, or two presentations. One, a general overview, and then he's going to talk about the very specific program which Traffic and the Global Forest Trade Network has put together as sort of a legality framework to assist people. So take it away, Chen.
Thanks, Jim. Yes, I think we have to, speakers have to stand here since we have to control the projector from up here. But thank you everyone for coming. We are glad you could find the room. I know it's not easy, unless you want to exercise and you walk all the way back here and climb up the stairs. First, Traffic. We are the sponsor, organizer for this workshop, together with Forest Stamos from Mexico. We are the only two that submitted actually ideas for workshop during the forum on legality. So we joined forces basically, and here we are today on this. And I would like to thank Chip, of course, for moderating on our behalf, and all the speakers. Some of them traveled just for this presentation, so we are very happy that they are here, especially Megan from here. I will try and be brief. The only problem is, sometimes I get a bit carried away. There's a lot of information when you talk about forestry. Right? Now how does this work? All right. First, I'm just going to give you a brief overview. I'm going to use some slides that was used by ITTO. I've got some as well, but this is just to give you a sense of what is happening. When you talk about logs, you can see the broader the arrows, basically, the more exports of logs from those countries. And we are talking about, essentially, when you talk about scale, you're talking about Malaysia and Papua New Guinea. The rest are all small players. And you notice that South America doesn't even come to the picture. There's only 2 continents. We talk about sawnwood. There's a lot more. Now South America comes into it. So you can see the comparison. All these are ITTO figures, okay, mind you. So Thailand comes into it. Thailand exports, you can see the broad green. Oh, well, I hope you can see it quite clearly.
We can turn the lights down a little bit.
So you can see that Thailand is enormous. Where do they get the sawn timber from? Right? They're supposed to have a moratorium on logging, even on natural forests. Indonesia comes in now. Indonesia has a log export ban since 2001. And Indonesia has a rough sawn timber export ban since 2004. And they're exporting a lot of timber, sawn timber. So what category of sawn timber is exported legally? So plywood, another example. You can see who are the main players and where it goes to. Of course, the US and the EU plays a big part. Japan, of course, China, as processing and re-exporting. So this is just to set the scene in the sense that we are talking about a trade that cuts across borders. So you can see where it goes to. And interestingly, we just did a paper, actually, myself and a colleague, which was presented to the Gulf Research Conference last year. Middle East is picking up. You can see a lot goes to Middle East. But that's just to set the scene, as I said. So we know illegal logging has been around for a long, long time. And we know governments are interested. Internationally, G8, World Bank, and others have been mentioning it. And recently, APEC Summit actually just came up with a statement mentioning illegal logging as well, that the APEC countries as well have to tackle illegal logging issues. And we have seen this before. At least I hope some of you have seen this from the World Bank's Seneca report. This is old data. It's so old that Indonesia is still way off here, 50%. So I have to put an arrow to make sure to show you that they've shifted. They have progressed. And yet, bear in mind, graphs like this are the ones that are still out there, and that is what NGOs, industry, governments are still looking at, using old data. So the facts about illegal logging, illegal timber trade has changed. But a lot of the information that we're getting is not up to date enough to be able to respond to it as matter of urgency and with the flexibility that's required. Now, there are many approaches to tackling illegal logging. The main 3, just to mention, there's a lot more information in the presentation. I think it will be uploaded onto the web so you can access it. So you can read it at leisure to get more information. I'm just highlighting the main points that I want to put across to you. There are 3 main areas of approaches to tackle the problem of illegal logging. Supply side, behavioral change, and demand-based approaches. Right? So just main 3. Supply side. Supply side means producer countries, the countries with the resources. And as I pointed out, like Indonesia, in the 80s, 90s, they were supposed to have a very bad reputation about illegal. They have progressed through legislation, improvements, enacting new legislation, through better governance and so on. But they still have problems. Chatham House report 2010 still says that there's roughly maybe 35% illegal logging still happening in Indonesia. But it's much better than 75% a decade ago. But it's still a problem. So there are many things that producer countries are doing. These are just some of the highlights. Behavioral change. How the industry and other stakeholders are changing, coming in with a code of practices, joining programs like the WWF Global Forest Trade Network, TFT, Smartwood, and others to become certified, to become legal and sustainable. and certification schemes, of course. Sarah Price is here from EFC. They work a lot on certification to make sure that companies are moving towards legality and sustainability. And Megan will be mentioning about the Forest Legality Alliance. And I think we can classify FLA under the behavioral change part of it to a large extent. Demand-based, consumer countries. Governments as an entity is one of the largest consumer of timber products. Any government, it doesn't matter which government. They're the largest collectively. All the local governments, local councils, central government, ministries, they all consume timber in one way or the other. This room itself, you can see the timber products. So collectively, they've got enormous bargaining power. And that is why many governments have procurement policies. It's more advanced in developed countries, we have to admit. At the same time, to make it stronger, they have import regulations. I mentioned Indonesia has a log export ban, so there's enforcement there. They have a sawn timber export ban, but no other country in the